College and University Recycling Coalition's webinar series. Today's session is on composting, technology and logistics of handling food waste in dining halls and at special events. You all should be able to see, if you've logged in properly, the webinar screen and also a little dashboard. If you have any technical questions, we'll go over those in a minute. But I want to give credit for the Alcoa company and Keep America Beautiful, who are sponsors and administrators of this webinar. My name is Rob Gogan. I'm the Recycling and Waste Manager at Campus Services at Harvard University, and I'll be your moderator today. The webinar is part of our free Kirk webinar series, which is designed to discuss trends, information, and perspectives about campus materials management. We're hosting these webinars every other month on the first Thursday of the month from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm pleased to be joined today by a full panel of very distinguished experts in managing organics on college campuses. Lori Husted, Sustainability Manager at Bates College. At Bard College, sorry. Morgan King, Sustainability and Waste Coordinator, Plant Operations, Humboldt State University. Robert Perez, Senior Resident District Manager for Aramark at the University of California, Irvine. Brett Berenger, Resident District Manager, University of Virginia. And Christy Cook, Senior Manager, Sustainability Deployment and Field Support, Offer Development Team at Sodexo Campus Services. Before we begin, I'd like to provide some housekeeping notes about how we'll conduct today's webinar. If you have any technical problems during the webinar, you can call GoToWebinar's customer support line at 800-263-6317. That's 800-263-6317. If you experience sound quality issues, please try hanging up and dialing back. Because of the size of the audience, and we have a record-breaking registration of 400 registrants today, it's a new record. We will be keeping the session in listen-only mode. All of your lines are therefore muted, but you can submit questions to us at any time using the questions panel on the right side of your screen. Simply click the plus sign next to the word question on your control panel, type in your question, and click send. If you don't see the question box on your control panel, try clicking on the tools menu on top of the panel. Then check the question selection. You can type in a question at any time during the presentation. We'll be sure to get back to you if you have a question that we're not able to address during the program. Any other concerns you may have can be addressed by using the chat function, which is at the bottom of your control panel. Click on the plus sign, type in your chat message, and make sure to send it to the appropriate person by using the pull-down menu at the bottom of the pane. One final housekeeping note, we'll be placing the slides and a recording of the webinar on the Kirk website as soon as we can, so that you can review the session or share it with your colleagues. Okay, so let's get started. Lori Husted is the Sustainability Manager at Bard College, and she's been at Bard since 2004, most recently as Sustainability Manager of the Bard Office of Sustainability. She's charged with helping the college achieve climate neutrality by 2035. Prior to working at Bard, she worked as an operations manager at an educational technology company in Pittsburgh. She received her MSIA from Carnegie Mellon in 2000. Take it away, please, Lori.
Great. Happy to be here. We're 100 miles north of New York City at a 2,000-person campus, Bard College. I've been here, as you said, about 8 years, and at Bard they've been composting for about a dozen years. And my job here is 25 hours a week, so much to pack in. The lucky thing about being part of a college is that each year, as you know, we press reset with 1/4 of our population. With that, I wanted to get sustainability and compost ever more firmly integrated into freshman orientation. And the Dean of Students agreed, so next step was checking in with our dining provider, Chartwell's, about this. I set a meeting with Chartwell's and set the bar pretty high. Would he start off with a meatless Monday meal? Would they be serving local food? And would there be a big Come to Bard picnic where we might collect food scraps? And his answers happily were yes to all, but as always, the biggest challenge is not getting to yes, but actually successfully executing on these projects. And for me, the food scrap part of it would fall into my basket. So this picnic had a couple of elements in my favor: the location of the event and the timing. The location, happily, it was in front of our main dining hall. We'll talk more about that later. And timing, it was not the very first meal being served to our students. So, well, I'll talk about that more in a second. Also, a local food event was being held the day before the picnic in our regular dining hall, and we just have the one main dining hall. Can you switch to the next slide? So let me explain why these things are important. The timing is important because since it's not the very first time, it's not the very first meal the freshmen are eating with us, these first-year students have already seen that we compost food scraps in that main dining hall. What's our process? Well, when the stars are aligned, and there are things that go into that, students simply take their durable dishes to one main dish return and scrape their plates into the food scrap bucket. So you can see on the left side of your screen an image of a sign that's above our one main dish return area. I put this in to show how the best of intentions can go awry. I asked for a good, clear, permanent sign up at that dish return about our food scrap program, and a year later this was there. And it's a bit overly detailed and confusing and also is wrong. So our simple message now that I kind of taped over the top of it is a sign that says, scrape your plate, it will be composted, and there's an image of a hand scraping in the action of scraping a plate. So it doesn't need to be much to read, and a simple message is all we need there. Now the middle image on your screen was out for the local food event that I mentioned that also predated the event where I wanted to compost. The students may not be aware that their food is composted, even if they are scraping their plate with that automatic behavior at our dish return. So we made these table toppers. I don't know if you can read them, but they talk about local food on one side, the fact that we'd put local squash in their meal that day, and that we're composting their scraps. So this is for people who read, and that's not everyone. The photo on the right is what the students see actually in the eating area, and it's sad. Yes, we have these naked trash cans. It's something I don't like to do, put out a solitary trash can, but housekeeping is not currently able to have compost in the dining hall for several reasons. So since I couldn't change the infrastructure this year, we tried a sort of fun sign that you can maybe read on the top. It says, hey, you with the chicken wings, no, we're not judging. We know they're delicious. When you're done, please compost them. This lets the students know that we take protein on our compost pile, which may not be clear with people who compost at home. And hopefully it stops their automatic disposal behavior, just makes them pause. The other way we get to stop that automatic behavior is we put the word landfill on the trash can, and I learned that from one of the other colleges out there. It was a great example. So when we have to, we do these workarounds when the logistics don't go our way. Can I have the next slide? So no perfect solutions, but remember I mentioned that the location of the picnic that we're holding was important. It's important because it's right next to this. It's in front of our main dining hall, so we have the infrastructure in place to be able to take compost around to our loading dock. The loading dock is the heart of our food scrap collection program. Every day, 6 to 18 of these 20-gallon green or gray wheeled buckets get filled with food scraps and wheeled to the back door from the dish return. When we weigh those materials during Recycle Mania, we find an average of 1,800 pounds come out of the dining hall daily during regular operation. And I attribute this to our all-you-can-eat dining hall. And it's even worse this year. I just got a phone call that they'd run out of bins. So, as a reference point, it costs us $79 a ton to send materials to a landfill and another $126 of haulage. So every week at last year's rates, that was about $600 a week given avoided disposal costs. Can I have the next slide? We have two smaller eateries, which I just mentioned, where we struggle to provide post-consumer collection. So luckily those places serve a la carte, so people are paying as they go, so there's much less food waste. So though we're missing some of the post-consumer, we do the pre-consumer in those two locations. Now, talking about the back end. Here, well, let me go back a sec. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, one worker, Fred, moves the food scraps that you saw on that last slide at 5:30 a.m. He shows up with a forklift with the 2 cubic yard box that you see on the left side of the picture attached. He dumps the buckets into the cubic yard box, which is back-breaking, but less back-breaking than it used to be when we had 50-gallon buckets up there. And then drives the forklift the quarter-mile down to the recycle yard where he's able to put it onto this concrete pad, which is 20 by 100 feet. And the things in the foreground are meaningless. They are unrelated to our operation. It goes next to the pile from the previous drop-off, and there are wood chips below waiting to receive the next addition. And I will take the next slide. So he amends every time he drops a pile of food scraps, he amends it with wood chips. That's the pile on the right. The mulch, the chips have been made previously with our wood chipper using the stuff on the left, the dead branches and pallets from campus operations. So it's nice to be able to use those on campus. Every few days, he incorporates the older materials with the new additions using a backhoe, and he talks about his pile maintaining a temperature between 160 and 180 degrees. Vectors we get, crows, the occasional skunk, and most recently, I guess, a group of seagulls comes to visit us for a couple of weeks each year, dining on that compost buffet. Next slide. So after 6 months, when about 40% of that concrete pad is covered, he moves it over here to this pile that you see. And you're seeing about 2.5 years worth of food scraps there. He uses a front end loader to flip the pile. And ideally, we would pay a third party to screen this, add sand, and I guess the word is trammel it, and create some beautiful topsoil. We haven't budgetarily been able to afford that the last couple of years, but it's waiting for the day. And as it is, you can see by Fred's foot there, we get reasonably good soil even without screening out the utensils. It just may have a few odds and ends in there. So we use it, Grounds and Horticulture uses it for fill on campus and for planting trees in the lower levels. So the next slide. Getting back to talking about our picnic. Since the timing is good and the location is good, and we have our back end here explained, how will this event be successful? And so there are several things we have to do. 2 days before an event like this, I have to put in a service request that lets ground staff and housekeeping know that there's going to be an event where food scraps are being collected. This is actually a second reminder because in theory, the event request form from Chartwell's already mentioned that they would like food scrap buckets in addition to trash and recycling cans. We use new, nice-looking food scrap containers when we can, because well, it's just better. The image on the right is what you see. We send them, we pre-label them with these food scrap stickers, so I know the cans will be delivered with labels. We used to hammer signs into the ground, and it didn't work. It was too cumbersome. So I've asked food scrap containers be placed with trash in a 1-to-1 ratio. Still, a couple of hours before the event, I tend to swing by to make sure the right containers have been delivered and are properly dispersed around the site. And actually, in general, I'm usually disappointed. I have to make some quick calls to get more bins, and I find myself moving bins around a lot to make them, to situate them correctly. And also on the left, I put in an example of a bin we use at indoor locations. And note the little green compostable liner for neatness. So the next slide. This I tossed in because I wanted to show you a few more types of containers. This is what we do for labeling at low waste events. You can see sort of the actual thing that we want in the can is sometimes hanging off the sign. Snack bags or plastic bags or twisty ties if we're reusing. I was also, let's see, what, excuse me, one thing I would change next time is probably the size of the trash cans for this particular event. We didn't need 55-gallon trash cans when our only trash was snack bags. I also was trying out green compostable liners to see how that would work, but there was so little food waste at this event. They matched the amount people would eat so well with what they put out that we didn't even have to change the food scrap buckets. I went overboard on that because it was Accepted Students Day. We were trying to woo new students and their parents, and I was trying to set habits before they even came to BARD. Next slide. So the back end. We're behind the gym right now where we had that event. There is a little loading dock, which is nice. But I wanted to see how everyone did with the low waste goals, and I had attended the event, so I stayed to the end and sort of encountered the last point of confusion in this process. I hadn't really informed all the people I should have who were helping empty the gym for the quick turnover for the next event. So trash and recycling, everything was brought out indiscriminately and bunched together. So you can see how I sort of role modeled how I wanted things separated so that the next handler would know what was what. And I think by showing up and demonstrating the behavior I wanted, maybe the staff members would think about it a little more next time. But obviously, I can't visit all special events. And towards the end of last semester, I was able to hire a work study student as a special events sustainability coordinator. So she does a lot more of the legwork and is my eyes and ears. Next slide. So we're trying out a new program this year that many of you may have, providing offices with bio bags when they request them. Some people really want to do it, and it's too hard to offer the service. So if they are willing to fill up these bags, monitor them, take them to Klein when they're full or stinky, that's up to them. Let's see, it's also probably going to be useful at some special events when we don't want to worry about losing our cans, because sometimes it's hard to get them back. Coming up on the end here, how about next slide? I had to throw in Axel and the electric cart and the compost bins. I was really lucky to inherit this residence hall compost collection program, and I know that's a little bit off topic today, but the students go around to the 60 kitchens and swap out these buckets that they've decorated, and it's a token program, but it's nice to keep compost in everyone's mind. Lastly, next slide. So just one more way, it's not, I call it food scraps, not food waste. We remind people that you don't have to compost it all. It can actually go into cookies. So we asked Chartwells to follow a recipe we found where the key ingredients are the ends of potato chip bags and pretzel bags and even coffee grinds. And then we had them special delivered to students with a little message. So a little fun way to do it differently. And I guess in closing, it just takes time to make sure all the dots are connected, but I really feel like new habits are being formed at BARD. This is a transition period, and we'll get it fully ingrained, and it'll just be the new normal. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Lori. That was fantastic. I forgot to mention when I introduced Lori that BARD was the Food Service Organics Recycling Champion in Recyclemania 2012. So congratulations to Lori, and needless to say, the results bear out the fact that Lori and Chartwells have put together with their landscape services fantastic partnership. Lori, I would like to ask a question. You indicated that at the just prior to some of the events, you find yourself scrambling a little bit to run around and get more containers or move them around. Do you see any improvement in that as the landscapers and the Chartwell's folks get used to making composting more of the basic infrastructure, or you think it's a never-ending challenge?
No, I do think, I honestly think that, especially when they see me out there and they see the student out there, that they start to stop the automatic behavior and think about what they're doing, and we are evolving. We did change our environmental services staff, so it's a little bit of new stuff there this year, but I'm very hopeful, and just putting eyes on it, and then eventually it won't have to be so much legwork.
Great. And one other question. The climate at Bard is pretty cold compared to most other parts of the country. Do you find that retards the finishing off of your compost?
You know, the back end of it, Fred, the manager down there, does a terrific job, and because we're not actually generating a product that horticulture is relying on for, she's still buying some soil, so she catch can. So winter, we're not needing it in the winter. I'm not. I guess the quality is not so good that everyone wants it, and we're losing over winter. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks again, Lori. That was awesome.
Okay.
Next up, we have Morgan King, who's Sustainability and Waste Coordinator for Plant Operations at Humboldt State University in Arcata, California. Morgan manages the recycling program, advises students, and facilitates the infusion of sustainability in campus operations and academics. Morgan holds a Master of Social Science in Environment and Community from Humboldt State University and a BA in Biology from the University of California, Santa Cruz. He's a certified building analyst and building envelope professional and has worked as an energy auditor and trainer, sustainability curriculum developer, and Peace Corps Nepal volunteer. Take it away, Morgan.
Thank you, Robert. And hello, everybody. As Robert mentioned, I'm the Sustainability and Waste Coordinator at Humboldt State, but I'm also the advisor for the Waste Reduction Resource Awareness Program, which is a Associated Students funded, student-driven program here at Humboldt State with the mission of increasing waste reduction awareness and education on campus. Humboldt State is located in Northern California, and we're a pretty small institution. We have a combined student staff population of around 9,500. We're also what you would consider a rural university with a potentially unique set of constraints when it comes to waste management. There is no active landfill in Humboldt County, so that means that all of our solid waste gets trucked approximately 180 miles outside the county to a landfill, either just outside of Medford, Oregon, or outside of Redding, California. So because of this, we pay very high tipping fees, perhaps some of the highest in the nation, ranging between $120 to $150 per ton. Also, we're dealing with very high greenhouse gas emissions associated with the long haul trucking of our solid waste. So there's a number of issues that help drive our waste reduction efforts and specifically our food waste reduction efforts. Another thing that we deal with here is that we really have no suitable location on campus to conduct large-scale composting. So really what we've done is taken a more regional approach in how we deal with our food waste and our organics. Next slide, please. Fortunately for us, our local waste management authority is also very interested in reducing the county's waste stream overall, and specifically its food waste stream. And we were fortunate to participate in a waste characterization study conducted in 2011, in which a consulting firm took a look at our solid waste dumpsters here on campus over a course of 2 weeks and actually pawed through it, conducted a waste audit, and came up with some figures on what we were actually seeing in our dumpsters. And it turned out that about 44% of the material going to the landfill was either food or compostable paper, as you can see from this chart. That's extremely high and was definitely of concern here on campus, not just to our administration, but to students as well. And for the county as a whole, it was slightly lower than that, but enough so that we were able to partner with the Humboldt Waste Management Authority to dive into the pilot adoption of a food waste diversion program that our local management authority was looking at trying to adopt for the greater county as well. And I'll speak about that in more detail in just a little bit. But here at HSU, we try to deal with food waste and compost through a three-tiered approach. The first is small-scale on-site composting. Secondly, we conduct aggressive outreach and education campaigns. And lastly, we have embarked on a broader food waste diversion program, which is actually removing our food waste off-site. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, I am the advisor for a student group on campus called the Waste Reduction Resource Awareness Program. And they have two branches in particular that focus on compost and food waste diversion here on campus. They operate a small-scale compost site, which is really designed to be a demonstration site. Their mission is to show students how not only how to compost, but then how to use the end product for a soil amendment. So they collect compost from some permanent bins on campus. This picture is showing one. It looks like a bear-proof bin that you might see at a campground, but we took some extra precautions because of potential vectors coming from the nearby forest. So they collect from those. They also put out temporary collection bins around campus as well, and end up composting approximately 5,500 pounds a year. That's a pretty small amount, but that's really hitting the threshold of what our university will allow for composting on campus. They've also expanded their composting collection to all the residence halls on campus, but the majority of their efforts go into outreach and education and creating a more active student population in the composting effort. Next slide, please. We also engage in zero waste events. Since the beginning of the semester, we've participated in 3 large-scale campus barbecue events, which totaled about 1,800 people. And those were zero waste. And what I mean by that is that all food serviceware was compostable. We were able to collect both meat and dairy, as well as your standard compostable materials for our food waste system. and there were no other plastic packaging or any other solid waste utilized for those barbecues. So those have been a tremendous success. We continue to do that throughout the year. We also participate in Recycle Mania, the Game Day Challenge, and at these events where we are collecting food waste and we have students out to essentially stand in front of our trash, recycling, and compost bins to help guide attendees in the proper disposal of items. Also recently we phased out plastic bottled water on campus, and we've done a number of things around just increasing awareness and active participation from the campus community through developing short films and guides, conducting ongoing orientation workshops, and developing some certifications such as a Green Room certification and now a Green Event certification that groups and students can go through in order to become greater participants in our efforts. Next slide, please. In the fall of this past year, we embarked on a food waste diversion program from the main food service areas on campus. And this entailed setting up collection bins in the food prep areas, at the back of the house, and in the dining areas. We also trained dining staff, put up signage, and conducted informal walkthroughs to speak with staff in order to integrate their feedback into the collection system. We then conducted an aggressive outreach campaign to increase campus participation. This included student volunteers manning the bins, included articles in the student paper, videos shown on monitors in the dining halls, table tents, and other signage. And through the year, we our waste reduction and found that by the end of the academic year, we were hitting 17 to 20% of an annual reduction in our campus solid waste, which meant about 15 tons a month of food waste that we were keeping out of the landfill. This food waste was and continues to go to a commercial composting facility outside of Ukiah, California, which is slightly closer than the landfill in terms of vehicle miles. But ultimately, our local waste management authority is going to be constructing an anaerobic biodigester, which can take food waste, compostable paper, and other organic materials, and through a digestion process actually capture methane to turn a generator which can create electricity, and then also create a soil amendment as a byproduct. So that's expected to come online in a year to a year and a half from now. But in the meantime, as a stopgap measure, we're sending all of our food waste, again, out of county. As a result, we have been seeing some cost savings. It's approximately $400 a month. We still have to pay a tipping fee for our food waste, but it's significantly less than what we're paying for solid waste. And we are seeing an avoidance of greenhouse gas emissions. But again, we expect that to improve once we have a regional taker of our food waste. Next slide, please. I also wanted to acknowledge some of the social benefits to this program. We feel that as this food waste system continues, expands, becomes more accepted, that we're seeing a greater opportunity for the growth of a culture of sustainability here on campus, and that students are going to be active participants in our process, and they're going to take those behaviors with them as they leave the campus and become members of other communities around the country. There's also a significant marketing potential for the university itself to be able to broadcast the benefits of this effort and to demonstrate that this university does take sustainability seriously. We've also had a tremendous number of student groups and individual students that have expressed interest and have become active members of our food waste effort. So what we're seeing is the utilization of sustainability as the context for learning. We've had interns that have worked specifically on food waste diversion projects, as well as classes taking on a certain portion of this effort. So for example, we had a student group start looking at composting the paper towels used in restrooms on campus and seeing if we can get that into our overall composting system. We had a student that worked on a compostable products report, which we presented to our campus dining, and they've started to adopt some of the recommendations that he had made for transitioning out plastic disposables with compostables. We've also had student groups that have created short films that are entertaining but also educational that we've been able to show to students to get them more on board with our process. Next slide, please. I also just wanted to mention some of the challenges that we've faced, one of those being contamination. It's an ongoing effort that's required to keep dining staff informed, keep student staff informed, and then also keep the greater campus population informed on what exactly can and should be composted or put into our food waste bins. And we continue to find contaminants in that food waste stream, but we also try to react to that, change up our signs to emphasize certain materials that we consistently see as a contaminant. And what we've been finding is that that we found a contamination level of approximately 5%, which is acceptable to our commercial composting facility, but we can always do better, and we're trying to do that. We also sent out a survey in the spring of this year just to get a better idea of the campus community's perceptions around composting and food waste, and it was very informative once we got that back. Some of the things that we came away with were that we need to make composting more convenient, so adding bins in convenient locations will increase our diversion effort. Also, our bins need to have better signage, and students just need to have a constant reminder and prompting of what can and cannot be composted. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I just wanted to mention that for us, this is an ongoing effort. Things are constantly changing as we move forward, but there are certain takeaways that I want to share. Was that critical of collaboration and consistent communication. There's a lot of people that have to work together to make this work. So we've been working very closely with our dining and with plant operations, with students to really get this thing off the ground. We've been able to identify and empower champions to help with that effort. We've found that building in flexibility has been critical so that at a moment's notice we can change bin sizes if needed. We can put up additional signs in a certain area where there's been a fair amount of contamination, etc. Also, it's been critical for us to continue to monitor and track our results so that we can respond to again, contaminants. We can respond to additional volume and make changes as we progress. In the future, we hope to do another waste characterization study so that we can take a look at how well we performed compared to our baseline. And we're hoping to continue to expand our efforts into other food service areas and also into future social marketing campaigns. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Robert.
Oh, well, thank you, Morgan. That was excellent. Some interesting programs you have going on there. Morgan, I wonder if you could give us a specific example of measures you've taken to remove or prevent a certain type of contaminant. And could you characterize what are some of the worst contaminants maybe, or most prevalent contaminants in your compost stream?
Sure. Well, our contaminants come from two different sources. One is from back of the house, so that's coming from the kitchens, and then the other is from the front of the house collections. And we found that really it's the front of the house that has been the most challenging for us because that's all students, faculty, staff that are using the compost collection bins in the main dining areas on campus. Items like chip bags, pretty much what we see is packaging that has food in it. Sometimes people just assume that throwing the entire thing into the compost is just fine. Also, coffee cup lids, they're plastic, but the cup that the coffee comes in is compostable. We oftentimes find the entire thing just in the compost bin. So with the back of the house contaminants, that becomes much easier to address because we can do a targeted effort to educate dining hall staff about these issues. But when we're dealing with the broader campus population, it's more challenging. So, we try to improve our signs. When there's certain contaminants, we try to do a greater job of identifying those and making people aware that those should stay out of the compost bin. And then, as I mentioned before, we continue to have bin manning where we have student volunteers stand in front of all of our compost bins in the dining areas and try to stop people before they just throw everything away, talk to them about what they have, and essentially guide them into the proper disposal of their items.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Morgan. Next up, we have Robert Perez, Senior Resident District Manager for Aramark, University of California, Irvine. And I must say, Robert, that I am particularly interested in what you have to say because UCI was the only school that beat Harvard in the waste category of the Sierra Club's list of cool schools. So I'm going to be taking copious notes with whatever you say. Robert is Aramark's Senior Resident District Manager. As I said, Robert's been at UCI for the past 6 years. He has a passion for sustainability, serving on UCI's campus-wide sustainability committee and is Aramark's regional sustainability steward for the West region of higher education. Robert has spoken at many national conferences, and his team at UCI is responsible for several sustainability programs such as Green Captains, Carbon Footprints, Weigh the Waste, and other programs. So Robert, take it away, please.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for the introduction. I really appreciate it. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to represent both Aramark and UC Irvine on this important topic. I'll now be discussing our journey to a zero-waste dining commons, which actually is more than just one dining commons. All three of our residential dining commons are zero waste. So all of the waste to landfills throughout residential dining has been eliminated here at UC Irvine. So let me talk a little bit about UCI briefly. UCI is one of the University of California's 9 campuses. It's located in Southern California in Orange County. It's one of the top universities in the nation, and it's a first-choice university. We actually had over 40,000 applicants for our freshman admission this year, and the average GPA of those incoming freshmen was 4.0. So we have about 28,000 students enrolled. 87% of the students come from California. 12% are international, and only 1% actually come from out of state. We have a very large faculty and staff of over 14,000, and that includes the large medical center. In regards to sustainability and recycling, UCI is very passionate. As you mentioned, the Sierra Cool Schools list, we actually placed number 6 on that list in general. Also, in regards to Recycle Mania, we finished 6th place in the Grand Champion category and 3rd place in the Gorilla category. We had a 77.5% recycle rate. So we're pretty proud of that. Go ahead and advance to the next slide if you can. Okay, so our zero waste and composting program is a collaboration of 3 university departments and Aramark. So here are the steps that got us to zero waste. First of all, we had to rearrange the loading dock areas to accommodate food bins at the smaller locations. And at the larger locations, we actually converted the trash compactor into a large food bin for off-site transportation, off-site composting. We had to coordinate with our housing department utilizing parking spaces for storage. We purchased new bins for commingled recyclables, coordinating with Rainbow Recycling, a third-party off-campus composter and recycler. We then trained our employees, and we included an educational field trip to the recycling plant. And there they were able to see exactly what happens to all the recycled material and what happens to the compost so they can come back and also educate students and the rest of our staff. We designated green captains. The green captains really championed the effort. They helped not only lead us to the zero waste, but they also were sustainability stewards in general, educating, as I mentioned, students and the staff. Finally, we continue to use zero waste as an educational opportunity beyond our staff and employees, but students in general here at the university. Go ahead and advance to the next. As you see there, the arrows sort of tell the story of where we went or how we got to zero waste. You know, our recycling here is actually relatively new. 2007 is when cardboard recycling started, so that was only 5 years ago. And from there, we went to office paper recycling campus-wide in 2008. 2009, we introduced commingled recycling program. 2010 was the first location that we introduced food composting, and that was our Mesa Commons. It is our largest residential dining facility. Some other things that we did in 2010, we had our waste audit performed, and there we were officially designated as a zero waste facility. And indeed, we were the first zero waste facility of any type in the University of California, not just food locations, but of any of our facilities in the University of California system. So that got our campus a nice distinction. 2011, last year, we introduced 2 additional residential dining locations, trained staff, and got that rolling. And also, we introduced food composting to 2 retail locations and catering, the catering kitchen as well. So our next goal is obviously to get to zero waste outside of residential dining and into the retail locations. Okay, so some quick statistics from last year. Over 300 tons of food waste were diverted from landfill. 150 tons of commingled recyclables. The diversion rate campus-wide improved 5%. So, as the large campus that we are, the composting improved the overall diversion rate 5%. So, and we actually saw cost savings to the university of $15,000, and that's for reduced land avoidance fees or delivery fees to the landfills. So the original cost of all the commingled recycling bins were about $3,000, and the trash compactors were converted to composting bins, and actually there was no cost involved in that. Okay, so on to the next one. So I ran through this pretty quickly, but I wanted to conclude by introducing or speaking about our zero waste events on campus and how we manage that process. I want to illustrate one event in particular. It was our basketball team's homecoming event. We don't have a football team, so our homecoming event is at our basketball game. So we had over 4,000 in attendance. What we did is we recruited over 40 intern volunteers, and we called them trash talkers. And they manned the stations that we had set up, 10 stations that were zero waste stations throughout the homecoming event in the stadium or the arena. We had many posters, Recyclemania posters, zero waste posters distributed throughout the event. So we actually succeeded to a 75% diversion rate, not quite a zero for our first main event, but the results we were very happy with. We actually went from a 5% diversion rate in previous events to over 75% for this one. So now all major events that we're doing on campus, sporting events, etc., concerts, we do the zero waste programming at those. So we're seeing a considerable waste diversion at all of our events now, which is really great. So that is my presentation, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. Your last slide in mentioning the basketball homecoming efforts you successfully put into motion last year reminds me that Recyclemania is having a basketball game day challenge that's coming February 2013. So it looks like the rest of us who are hoping to join in are going to have to really do a lot to match that 75% diversion rate. And I'm going to look to you, Robert, to exceed that this coming year. But again, thank you so much for your excellent presentation. And let's move on now to Brent Berenger, Resident District Manager for the University of Virginia. Brent was named the 2011 College Food Service Excellence Award winner, given by the National Association of College Auxiliary Services in conjunction with On Campus Hospitality magazine. As Resident District Manager at the University of Virginia, Brent oversees dining operations for the university, including residential, retail, catering, a faculty and staff restaurant, and concessions. Brent has a bachelor's degree in hotel and restaurant administration from Florida State University. Brent, take it away, please.
Good afternoon. Our program is a little different in the way that it is designed simply because of how the university is. And that may sound familiar to a lot of you as you think about your universities, but the University of Virginia has kind of a unique perspective on how on how we approach things, and that student leadership and student governance are first and foremost among the way we approach situations. And the reality is that the students here are driven and are somewhat unique in the public school world. 92% of them are in the top 10% of their class when they come out of high school. The university, again, for quite a number of years was ranked number 2 in U.S. News and World Report's ranking of public universities. So there is a real expectation on the part of everyone involved here at the university that these students will develop into the leaders that they are expected to be. And what that does is kind of filters down into the approach that we end up taking in everything that happens here on grounds. Slide. So what we did just a few years ago was try and figure out how to move forward with composting here at the university. And what we did in starting with that was work with students to basically complete a SWOT analysis of what there was available to us. And the first thing we saw very quickly was that there really wasn't useful access to a commercial composter within Central Virginia. We did have a very strong recycling program with already a 45% diversion rate. And really a very good program, award-winning. It relied very heavily on post-consumer sorting, so a lot of hands involved in that, but it definitely got the job done. We have very strong student leadership in environmental science, and really what made this possible to kind of bring this all together were some of the resources on the university side. So between University of Virginia Recycling, our Department of Environmental Health and Safety, we're actually able to work directly with some students and try and figure out how to move this forward. The other thing that we did that kind of to get us started on this project and several others in our environmental sustainability group was to bring together the leaders of the different student environmental groups on grounds that we were dealing with and bring a representative of each one of those groups together in a green dining coalition. And that group meets on a biweekly basis and basically sets the environmental policy for the entire dining operation, including composting, purchasing, and all of those other kinds of things. And because of them, the dining program here really leads the environmental sustainability field at the university and has kind of blazed a trail for others to follow and work with here at UVA. To this point, again, because of them, we're the first and only dining program in the Commonwealth that's been admitted to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality Exemplary Environmental Excellence Program, and that was through the hard work of the other university departments in helping us with that, and certainly the student participation in the program. Next slide. So the plan that was put together really was a very concise 12-page plan about absolutely everything that we would encounter in working through a composting program. This program was designed, written, and basically executed by the students. We worked with a local farm composting operation, Panorama Pay Dirt, who have been very good partners throughout all this. Educational involvement became a critical piece of this. The codes in Virginia, you know, as they differ in all jurisdictions, were very specific about what could and could not be done in the composting realm. And because there was not a commercial composting facility available at the time that we started this, we had to try and figure out what were the other ways that we might be able to do this. Fortunately, there's an educational exemption in the state code that allows us to create a program with an authorized farm composter for educational purposes, as long as it did not overtop a diversion rate of 5 tons per week. So we were able to work within that, create a program that made sense, and move forward. And so really what we did was, in our residential dining rooms, and we're serving about 60,000 meals a week in those dining rooms. We set up a program where all of the waste, both front of the house and back of the house, went through a pulper where it was ground and had a fair amount of the water removed to get the weight down. The UVA recycling team actually hauls that material that's packed into drums out to the recycling, or to the composting site. Along the way, the university students weigh and measure that material and track it through the process. We use a windrow system out at Panorama Pay Dirt. They're using wood chips as the additional material that's mixed in, and the process takes about 18 months to cure, and then that material is resold by Panorama to landscapers around the area. We also bring some back on grounds for the community gardens and things that the students are doing, so that some of the material at least comes full circle. The students, along the way, the students are testing and measuring the material, obviously tracking temperature, all of those kinds of things. The one area that we haven't actually gotten them involved in yet, and are working to do that, is the final testing, pathogen testing. We do that with a commercial lab. We would also like to get the students to be able to do that as well, and we're working through the logistics of getting the equipment and space to enable some of the students in our sciences areas to be able to help us with that as an additional test and learning activity. Next slide. The results, since 2008, we have diverted 280 tons. We're really, the next step for us is how do we expand this into future locations. And so right now, we have seen a change in our marketplace over the last 12 months or so. And in fact, commercial composters are coming into the area, and we have some additional opportunities to change the program and add some of the retail locations, some of the concessions locations, areas where we're not dealing with a pulped material, but actually things, just straight out of the waste stream. And so we just began working on that process here this last week. One of the additional educational pieces that really has involved the students is both in the dining room and in the classroom setting. It's created a fair number of opportunities for additional studies, additional class projects, waste measurement studies, diversion rate studies, just how to take this, what we've learned here, and apply it to other folks here in the community, whether it's public schools or what have you. So really a lot of student involvement and a lot of additional education that has been done from here. And it certainly helps us validate what we're doing, but also helps us learn and continue to learn in this process. We still see a lot of waste studies conducted in the dining room, and one of the most gratifying pieces as we've communicated what we're doing over the last few years, we've actually seen the waste that's being removed drop by about 25% per student, which has been truly amazing. But just by being more focused on understanding what is happening, and that that waste is a very real issue in their lives, and that sort of thing, that we've actually seen the way in which that they eat, the way in which they take food or additional things, that it's changed quite a bit, and that has been very gratifying. You know, the final thing is it's it's certainly been a very good opportunity. We did in 2010 receive a Governor's Environmental Excellence Silver Medal for the composting program, and it's been a program that we've helped a number of other schools try and work through. And that really is the most important part to us, is just how to take that knowledge and continue learning ourselves, and then share it with anyone else who wants to follow down the same path. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck with your programs.
Thank you very much, Brent. I have a quick question for you, Brent, if I may. You mentioned a very high degree of student research and monitoring involvement. I imagine that there is some kind of faculty connection or supervision with that. Could you say a word about how or whether you've been able to get the interest of members of your faculty to get students to do this research?
Oh, absolutely. That has been a very strong piece of it. Again, the initial plan that we worked under was actually a master's thesis. So it's been student-driven from the very beginning, but faculty are very involved. We have a number of faculty, both in our urban planning department as well as in our environmental science department, who are either teaching material that is coming from this program, or suggesting to their students that there are new areas of investigation that are tied to this that they should undertake for a class project. So very rarely do we go through a semester where we don't have 3 or 4 class projects that are centered right around the composting program in particular, but also other programs that we run from a sustainability standpoint.
Thank you very much, Brent. That was fabulous. Next up, we have Christy Cook, Senior Manager for Sustainability Deployment and Field Support, Offer Development Team of Sodexo Campus Services. She's the National Senior Manager for Sodexo in this area. Excuse me. In this role, she deploys sustainability initiatives, helps Sodexo clients solve specific sustainability issues, and develops sustainability training, education, and tools for Sodexo team members for over 650 college campuses across the United States. Christy also chairs the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission Agriculture and Local Food Group, enjoys the outdoors, and loves to spend time with family and friends. Take it away, Christy. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So hello, everyone. I have the pleasure of rounding out today's presentation. You guys have heard some great examples of case studies about zero waste, and I'm going to focus on education, training, and recognition based on the experiences at Ohio State University and their zero waste program. Next slide, please. So first, I want to briefly touch on Sodexo sustainability. Supporting zero waste and other sustainability initiatives at our partner campuses across the country is extremely important to Sodexo. It's also part of the culture of our company. So we created our Better Tomorrow plan, which is our strategic approach to sustainability. It's a 10-year vision that focuses our efforts into developing measurable targets and reporting our sustainability progress on the 14 commitments you see here. So for the zero waste efforts at Ohio State, reducing organic waste is a fairly obvious, important, relevant commitment to this program. We're also supporting local community development with organizations like Price Farm Organics that handles the compost, and Rumpke that manages the recycling. Corey Hockey is the sustainability coordinator for Ohio State, and he works with pro team staffing that sources local youth that work within the concourses of the football stadium to interact directly with the fans to help them separate waste. I'm sure I missed out a few people in pointing some of those folks out because If one thing is true at Ohio State, partnerships really run deep. It does take a lot to execute the program. Lastly, we also divert any food that can be eaten to area food banks. Sodexo has a global initiative to end hunger through the Stop Hunger Foundation, and food donations are a part of that. In short, being an active partner at Ohio State Zero Waste efforts is an absolute no-brainer. All of us involved really want to share this story as much as possible. Next slide, please. So what I want to talk about is some of our results, some of the collective results that we've had. And you can see some of the screen results from the last 2 football seasons. The highest diversion rate last season was 82.4%, and I should say that we really started tracking intently in last season, with our average, season average being 75.3. It's also important to note that we had some food diversion numbers in 2010 through food donations, but we only tracked them inside Sodexo at the time, so it's not represented here. But food donations are calculated in the 2011 food diversion numbers. Our goal this year is to average 90% diversion rate and achieve zero waste. It's also important to note, too, that inside the stadium, we really look at having 2 waste streams, recycling and compost. So although you can see landfill represented on this slide, we don't advertise it that way or communicate it inside the stadium. So the recycling stream is sorted after the game. Non-recyclables are sent to the landfill. Next slide, please. I mentioned partnerships earlier, and one group that's integral to the zero waste success is also the athletic facilities department. You can see this picture here. It takes a lot of people to make it happen. We couldn't have done this without the entire team. Athletic facilities department members are here, just a few, also the Office of Sustainability in Sodexo, but the largest amount of people in this picture are the community youth members from Pro Team that I mentioned. So a great program takes a great team, but that's what we believe we have. But there's a lot of people here that you see and some you don't. So it takes a whole team. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit of a background and information, but I want to provide some specifics. So here's some more numbers for you. These are the areas where we provide dining and therefore need to capture the waste streams for all of these areas inside of a football game. There are different types of services, expectations from our customers, and methods of serving those customers. So it might be quick service concession stands to high-end dining in the suites or the club level, and all of those areas that we oversee. We also have 2 kitchens and special event catering across the stadium. So we serve about 105 fans on a game day. Next slide, please. The next thing that I think is interesting is that community partners serve as staffing for most of the event spaces, and they supplement the Sodexo team members. So these nonprofit organizations or NPOs, they work in the concession stands to raise money for their organizations. Since 2000, Sodexo has returned $10 million to the local community through the support of these type of partnerships like this. And it's a great way to contribute to the community. The NPOs also, though, represent a unique challenge in education because the participants of these groups may change from game to game. So it's entirely possible that you might have a volunteer be at the game for only one game, and it could really change every time. So that's important. And that brings us right on to our challenges. Education and training is a challenge because of the ever-changing NPO members from game to game, but it's also the core to building the culture of the zero waste at Ohio Stadium. We have to continue to reinforce education and training with the Sodexo team as well. But if you combine the number of locations we service with the ever-changing group members that I showed you before, we knew that our education and training system that we used last year had to evolve for us to get better. Lastly, because of the vast expanse of the stadium and the number of stands and carts and suites in different areas, the collection process varies in each of those areas. So it had been a struggle in the past, and we believe we found a method that works this year, and I'll touch on that in a moment. So after talking about challenges here, let's talk about some solutions. On our next slide, we'll talk about something fun, education and training. So I mentioned education and training as a challenge, but it is also part of the solution, as is recognition. Molly Kurtz is the Sodexo General Manager at Ohio State, and she created a Zero Waste High Five program to recognize the group's zero waste performance. This is a positive recognition. It's a way to reward the groups that retain that education that they receive throughout the season and the year, incite them to participate in additional learning opportunities, and also to share that training with their groups. They really have to, with the NPOs changing each game, it's really important that we take those leaders of the NPO groups to also help with that training. So next we have to talk about our positive recognition, and let me tell you a little bit more how the High Five program works. And on this next slide, you can see a bit of an overview. The basic infrastructure is that the program is for our NPOs that staff the carts and stands in the general concourses, as well as the concession stands in the suites. So it ranges from about 110 to 125 stands and carts, depending on the size of the game. Within those areas, we recognize those groups by having clean compost or non-contaminated compost by giving them a high five. 5 high fives in a season equal an additional incentive to their commission rate, so they can earn more money. And a perfect season, which is 8 games this year, gives them an opportunity to win an additional bonus. The other side of that, with the 8 games, it really gives some groups the opportunity to be rewarded, even if they struggle at the beginning. It gives them an opportunity to get in the swing of things. So they still have an opportunity to get 5 highs within the football season. So next we'll talk a little bit about education. And so next one is a strong focus on education. It's part of our culture, but it's a little bit different when you're training some of the NPO groups that have day jobs, other things they have going on, and we're only going to see them for several times a year. So we have a group leader. Vicki Graves is our NPO group coordinator. She's also a zero waste champion, so any education and training always incorporates zero waste. We have a required training that takes place over the summer for all the NPO groups and the Sodexo team members, and we review and discuss the practices. The NPO and the Sodexo team members play an important role because we view them as the experts. They're the ones that are doing this every day, and so together we create solutions to really fit what works best. We've also created a visual sample display of all the disposable products. It helps with looking at the associated waste streams and where things go. We've heard great comments back from the groups about how that has been important to them too. We also have a voluntary training that takes place in the mid-season, and that's when our guests, really their behavior starts to change. And coffee, Morgan mentioned this earlier, it's a great example. The paper cup goes into compost, but the plastic lid goes into recycling. So we reinforce that message through fun games that the groups enjoyed. And again, just to reinforce in case you didn't catch that, NPO is our nonprofit organizations and our volunteers. So those are the groups that we're really looking at as well because they're the majority of our staffing. And during the season, we also have pre-game meetings before every game, and reference sheets are given out that contain important notes, and zero waste is always a part of that. So let me tell you a little bit about what's happened so far. We've got 2 games under our belt. There's an excitement level from the NPO groups that wasn't as prevalent last year. The excitement has increased, the participation has increased, and we're collecting more and more compost with less contamination. In fact, our preliminary numbers indicate that in our first 2 games, we've already captured 60% of the compost that we captured in 7 games last year. So we know that our process, we're basically deducing that our process is working better. And the season will help us with more indicators with that. Lastly, the process that we use this season holds everybody accountable, but with positive reinforcement. So let me give you an example of our collection process, because that's been really important. I mentioned previously that the collection process was a challenge. And what we did is we needed to change it for the High Five recognition program to be successful and to really capture everything. So in 2011, all of the locations from the stadium brought their compost, cardboard, recycling, and food donations to one central location. The nonprofit groups, the NPOs, dropped off those items at each of those locations and really went on their way. At the compost drop-off, we went through the compost by hand, removing any contamination, and then we put it into the larger container that you see on your screen. The problem with that method, though, was that the teams weren't really involved in the process. So we weren't reinforcing that education. The groups didn't have to go through the bags themselves, or they didn't sort And the sorting team themselves, with receiving all of the compost at one time, we were really swamped, so we weren't able to track. So last year's collection process, we struggled with tracking. There wasn't positive reinforcement and reinforcement of the education. So this year, you can see we've got some tubs, and here's what we're doing. Each stand and cart received these tubs. During the fourth quarter, we divide up into 4 teams, one for each level of the stadium. We have a zero waste expert group from Linden McKinley High School. They worked with us last year that really only focused on zero waste, and they're doing it this year. And so we go through all the compost from each NPO group. We pour the clean compost from the gray tote into a larger tote on wheels that we can roll around. We also assign a score to the group based on the level of contamination of the compost. The NPO group signs off on that form. So basically what happens is you have that reinforcement, continued education, and the training to really reiterate everything we need to, and to also show them that it's important. That has been a huge step for us. And it's also allowed us to increase the overall volume of compost, as well as reducing the amount of food waste that goes into the landfill. So let's talk about the high fives just a little bit more. On the left is an example of the high five. We give those out to groups that have no contamination or just a little bit of contamination. And that picture on the left shows kind of what that looks like, and that's an example. At the first game, we gave out 57 high fives. In game 2, we gave out 70. So we know that our collection process improved, but we also had a good participation process. So we will review their performance, and really we were able to eliminate a whole step from the closing procedures by the way we were picking this up, and we think that really helped with our participation program too. By the end of the season, our goal is to have 90% of our stands participating and receiving high fives. We feel like that mirrors the zero waste target. And for the first season, we had about a 50% rate of high fives, 60% in the second game. So we know we can get there, and we want to get there quickly. But there are a few groups that still aren't participating, but with the education and collection process, we are seeing them come around. So let's talk about success just a little bit. I think there are a couple of areas that you really need to have in order to be successful based on what we've seen. Dedicated resources. I mentioned the Linden McKinley High School nonprofit group, and we consider them our zero waste expert team. They assist us with the manpower to collect the compost. And I think it's also really cool to note, too, that last year, because they helped us, they really advocated at their high school, and this year's senior project is dedicated to zero waste. So that was a really neat connection. On game days, I'm a dedicated resource, as well as Nicole Hartner and Vicki Graves, who are also both zero waste champions. So all members, not just these folks, though, have a role. Partnerships, you've heard me talk about partnerships the entire presentation, very, very important. But in order to continue to really drive these results, flexibility is also important. Small changes need to be refined from game to game. But I can also tell you from experience that don't make change just for sake of change. Continuity is important. And although I mentioned dedicated resources, it's no one's full-time job to be devoted to zero waste at Ohio State. So communication and teamwork is important. And we really have to have everyone committed, 100% committed to that goal. But what I think is the most important thing is, on the last slide you'll see, is that you just have to have fun. The Sodexo team at OSU, we've dug through thousands of pounds of food waste together. It's not glamorous work. All of you have probably done that too. And having fun and the ability to laugh at each other when those gross things happen, you get cheese sauce splashed on you or something like that. It's not a lot of fun. But I want you to know you have to have fun. And last year for my birthday, the team gave me this Oscar the Grouch hat that sits on top of a zero waste trash can. They thought it was just really funny because basically I lived in a garbage can last football season. So when I think about it, I think of this gift as a reminder of how well we work together, how to have good humor, and really make it through those long hours. So I believe this is why we're successful, why I believe we can all work together, and that Ohio State has the best zero waste program in the country. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Christy. I want one of those Oscar the Grouch caps too, but it would mean a lot more if it was given to me by my team. Christy, I wanted to ask you a question. I'm very impressed with your work rounding up the NPO groups, and thanks for explaining that that stands for nonprofit organizations. Can you just say, I saw your high fives and so on. Can you just say what you do to recruit them?
Good question, and we do have the coordinator that does a lot of the recruiting, but a lot of it actually takes place word of mouth. We have groups that churches and high school athletic teams, band groups, cheerleaders, that they travel 2.5, 3 hours every game just to get here. So we do a lot of recruiting in the area through the high schools, through churches, but a lot of it is word of mouth through the other groups. And you know, if anybody knows of any other groups in the Columbus, Ohio area, we are looking for about 2 or 3 more. It's been a great fundraiser for those groups, and we continue to generally retain those groups as well.
Great. I do have a correction to make. Lori sent in the fact that the correct name for the food scraps bag she uses is the Bag to Earth food waste bag. This is for the buildings that don't have food scrap collection in their building. Now, there was another question that came in earlier, and I'll open this up to anybody on the panel to respond to, is dealing with liquid waste. You know, everything from residue from beverage containers to soups and sauces that, especially in the hot weather, even salads that generate a slurry. Very awkward to handle that. Any special words of wisdom on how to keep that slop from spilling all over the dean when she walks around the corner?
Our approach on this at UVA is to put the material through a pulper, and that's really one of the reasons we do that is to remove that part from the equation, and it removes about 25% of the weight when the liquids are removed, and we end up with really a more controllable mixture when it goes out to composting, and we don't run into the issues with liquids and everything being an issue in transport.
Terrific. Something that we do on our campus is to, when the compost truck starts their day, they get animal bedding and landscape waste that is a lot more absorbent before they do the dining halls. So there might be a way to blend your compost to wick away some of that excess liquid. Well, with that, I'm sorry to say that our hour-and-a-half allotted time has zoomed by. I'd like to invite all of you, well, I'd like to thank our panel, first of all, very much for knocking themselves out with PowerPoint and very stimulating and informative presentations. This whole webinar will be on the Kirk website, and I invite you to the next Kirk webinar, which will be on Thursday, November 8th, on measurement and verification, the role of recycling in existing sustainability rating systems. It's at 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And thanks very much for attending today. And good luck with Game Day Challenge. And we hope to hear from you in November.